Okay, so in this video I'm going to show you how I took my ICARO Solar X paramotoring helmet and fitted a Sena 30K. It's the latest mesh technology, but the Sena 20S I believe fits on exactly the same mount, so exactly the same principle. First of all, I mounted it round the back of the helmet, and I did that so I can take the Peltor 3 air defenders and flap them round if I want to, so I can take them off. Maybe if I've shut the engine down and I want to free ride down, I can still get my ears undefended, as it were. And so I tucked all the cables in and I fitted them in, as you'll see later on in this video, and I installed the headphones into the ear cuffs. But most importantly, I've put the microphone on the actual wire here, and that fits perfectly. So when I clip it on my head and do it up, the microphone is in the actual perfect position. I can flip the visor down and it doesn't obstruct anything. So let's show you how it was fitted. Okay, so welcome to the Sam Lab. We're going to go through a bit of the construction here. So you can see on the finished article the microphone was positioned in the perfect place. I just put a cable tie through there, through the chin strap to hold it securely, and I did cable tie the remainder down, but of course it flapped and I think it would put undue tension on the cable itself. So what I've just done is use some high quality insulation tape there to tape that in. Now, because I'm going to put the Sena 30K or the S20, as I say, at the back of the helmet, so I can flip up and down my air defenders, I had to cut a lot of the cables. So with the Sena kit you get this basic setup. So in order to put a mouthpiece at the front of my mouth, I took the long wired kind of mouthpiece and I cut the lugs off with a sharp Stanley knife, and of course the cable's not long enough, so I cut off the plug, and then I took the wired mic and cut the mic off there. And what I'm hoping to do is join those two pieces of wire together in order for it to plug back into the controller, which will be on the back of my head. And then unfortunately, to thread the wires through the earmuffs, I had to cut the cables, and indeed the short one is too short, so I've cut both those cables off. And in order to get them through the earmuff, I did actually, because when you get the Solar X, this earmuff is like £50, which is about $987 in US money. And I didn't know how to drill a hole or what damage I would do or whether I could get them apart. So I looked on eBay and I actually found some ex-stock Peltor 3. Well, they were damaged stock, the box was slightly squashed. I bought this on eBay for £15, which is about $370 in US money. Or was it $3,700? I don't know. So this enabled me, you know, I could destroy this, I can pull it apart, I can see what damage I can do, I can see whether it comes apart, and my conclusion is it's a pretty sturdy piece of kit, and no, it doesn't come apart. But what you can do is you can pull this huge great big piece of foam out quite easily that's in the middle, which exposes the inner shell, and I think there's a double shell there, probably with some kind of sandwich between it, like polystyrene. So all I did was I got a 3.5mm drill bit and I carefully drilled a hole through here, which then enabled me to thread each of the ear pieces. So if we go back to the helmet itself, you can see there's my wire coming out, and inside is my earpiece. And I've put the foam back in here. On reflection overnight, I thought, yeah, but this cable wobbles about, and that'll cause undue stress around that area there. So I bought some heat shrink. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that cable back, I'm going to slightly drill the outside hole up, and I'm just going to put a little bit of heat shrink in there to make it look better. And I might take the foam out and put some hot snot in there, or maybe even silicone sealer, just to seal the hole up to reduce any noise that is going to get through that hole. Although it's such a tight fit and a good fit, I don't think it'll be a problem. And then we'll probably cable clip this down and push it into the outer shell here, and like I say, extend those cables through. And of course that was a bit of a scary thing to do, to cut all those cables, but of course Sena do actually provide you with a spare kit, which you can buy on Amazon or whatever. So if you do completely cock it up, hopefully, you know, it's not the end of the world. So I'm going to proceed with the build, and we'll see where it takes us. So I've just installed one of the earpieces, so that's put in there right now. There's some spacers and a bit of foam to go on, included in the kit, but I've just put the heat shrink in there. So I pulled it through a little bit. I just left it so the earpiece just dangled out. I shrunk the heat sleeve back in and then pushed it back in, and then put some hot snot on it. And I'm just going to do the other one, so perhaps we can see that. And it's worth noting here, I've actually put a bit of red tape round here to allow me to know which one I cut off the actual Sena control. That is for the right ear. The longer one in the kit is for the right ear. So let's just feed that to the right distance, and very carefully inject a big bubble of this. The great thing about that is you can kind of quickly, ouch, push that in with your finger. Whoops, I think I just burnt my finger. Maybe not advisable. Maybe I should put some spit on the end of my finger. But let's attach that in. A little bit painful. It's coming off though. There we go. And I'll put the foam back in. Squeeze that round so it fits in perfectly. And let's fit the other speaker into the earpiece. I can push the longer bit of cable this side, so I've actually allowed a little bit more spare cable in that earmuff. And you can see, well, maybe you can't see, but there's a little bit of heat shrink just stopping there. So next I'm going to cable tie that down, and I realised last night that actually wants to be cable tied possibly to the front one, so when you swing it out the way, it will then be tucked into the lining and around. So what I've just done here is I've got the earpiece wire coming down here, and I've just soldered it using a soldering iron, not a soldering. The Americans seem to solder everything, which in English actually means something completely different that I don't think many Americans will understand. Well, they may understand, but okay, so all we do is we put the soldering iron underneath the cable, we put a dab of solder on there, and we let the heat absorb up the wire, and then we put the solder gradually on the wire, and it will melt into the wire, and that will absorb all the solder. So now what I'm going to do, and this operator's here, I bought a soldering iron and this little stand for about £15 I think on Amazon. Absolutely incredible value. And of course £15 is about $287 in silly money, and oh, I think we've just about got that perfect. So what I now need to do is cut that back this bit, insulate between them, and join them two. And let's say it's not the most perfect connection. I'm not too sure how I can improve on that. I did find though, when I cut back the actual speaker cable, it is a 3-core cable, so much to my surprise, I'm very surprised it's 3-core. So I'll push out. So now I don't know whether we can see this. Let's zoom in a little bit. I've managed to take the 3 wires, this goes to each speaker, and I've managed to reconnect the original connector, which is going to go back to this back piece when it's back in. But boy, was that a little dodgy to solder, and I've connected them. I'm just going to put a piece of heat shrink hopefully over the whole connection. And I did actually put 2 pieces on just in case I messed up, or I don't think really one of them's long enough, so I just think what I'll do is put 2 on there and bond them over each other. And there we are, the finished result. I heat shrinked 1 piece and then slid another piece over to make quite a nice neat job of that. And I found if you put a screwdriver in between the shell and the fibre glass of the ICARO helmet, I can just wedge the cables in, but it's a very, very tight fit. So I've just come to do the other earpiece, and this was the one with the short cable. Now, I'd originally put it through the hole and everything, but the join was going to be here, and I thought, no, that's not really very good. So what I've decided to do is pull it back, and I've basically got this old jack to jack. Well, it isn't old actually, it's probably never been used, but I'm going to feed that through, and that'll have enough cable that I could actually join it in the earpiece itself and take it back to the back of the helmet for the to join on the original wires. So that's my little plan. The only trouble is this is screen 2 core, so I'm going to have to join that 3 core onto a screen 2 core, which is going to be a little bit fiddly, but yeah, the complexity of this job is getting somewhat more. So this is one of these times when you go whoops, because as I said, there was a 3 core cable coming with the headset, so I cut it back, and as I pulled to strip the blue one, it came out of the speaker, and I thought, shit, I'm going to have to order a new speaker. I've buggered it up. So I quickly soldered it back on the controller and tested it, and it only uses the red and white, so it is actually a 2 core cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my 3 core cable. I'll just peel the screen back, join it on, and then use that cable. So it's actually simpler than I thought. It does not require a 3 core connection. So I've got everything back together now, and I'm just about to stick it to the back of the helmet. So I think what I'm going to do is go with a sticky pad, this Sena sticky pad. So what I'm going to do is tighten up them screws and, and glue it to the bottom. Okay, so now we've finished the construction, I'm just going to take it off and just review what I've done now it's all finished. So hopefully we can see this in the microphone, in the camera there. So the first thing I did was I put 2 cable ties on to hold the microphone, and this was the extra microphone with a wire on it. I cut the plug off. I took the wired microphone that comes with the Sena, and I cut the microphone off that, which then allowed me to join it together to gain the extra distance to put the Sena at the back. Even if you didn't do that, and I suppose you might manage to physically plug it in, but it would restrict you to put the Sena there, and then you couldn't flap your ear muffs up. And I cut the 2 headphones off the Sena, and I marked the long one with a red piece of tape which goes to the right ear. Now that one was long enough, so I cut that off near the Sena, so that was long enough to install into the right cup and feed the cable all around the back here and rejoin it to the actual physical controller. I'll show that a bit closer in a second. Now the left one, I cut it off a little bit long, and then when I came to fit it, I thought really what I should have done is cut it off at about 3 inches, and then that would enable me to join it actually in the ear piece, add an extra bit of cable which then is fed up to the Sena and then rejoined here. So you're adding an extra bit of cable to gain that extra space to connect the Sena. And then we stuck the Sena base onto the back, and let's see if we can get a close-up there. I've managed to tuck those wires and just cable tie them rather neatly and securely on the back of the Sena adapter. And like I say, the 30K is the same as the 20S, so the principle is the same. And I should imagine there's several others, and the camera's focusing on my face and not the actual unit itself. So yeah, there you can see, I think it's a pretty tidy installation. It's a little bit fiddly to connect everything together, and also, like I say, there was 3 wires in each earpiece, but it only actually used the red and white, so you only need really a 2-core bit of cable for that extension there. That's what I got away with. And of course I put a bit of heat shrinking here to give this a little bit of extra, when in actual fact this is the extra cable I put in, which was a little bit more substantial than the Sena one, but I put a bit of heat shrink here. I also pulled these cups off. Let's just focus on there. I managed to pull this out, this wire out. I'm just working, I don't know, don't think it does any damage to pull it out. I shouldn't think, if you pulled it out 100 times it would probably fail eventually, but that enabled me to put a bit of heat shrink down on this bar here and then shrink that in, so that was a bit tidier than using a cable tie or insulation tape. Of course I put insulation tape on this bit here because when I did a cable tie the cable flapped out and it would wobble and then eventually fail, so by putting 2 bits of cable insulation tape around there, I think that just made that a little bit more secure. Again, it's focusing on my face. There we go. So yeah, I think that's fairly tidy, and the great thing about that position also is if you don't really want the mic, you can actually flap it up into the corner of the helmet out of the way quite nicely. It just fits in there absolutely perfectly. So anyway, I hope that helps anyone else fit it. It's not the easiest of job. The soldering is a little bit fiddly, very small wires. But like I say, you can buy the adapter and the headphones and the replacement mic for about £45 on Amazon. So if you do cock it up, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to buy a complete new Sena kit.